Excuse me, officer, I am speaking now.
We must ensure that the events of today cannot overshadow the pursuit of justice. Before I begin, I want to emphasize that we will not be silenced by these intimidation tactics.
Officer, may I help you?
The flashbulbs stung like tiny explosions. Cameras blinked. Reporters leaned in. The ballroom hummed with expectation until the officer's shout cut through it like glass. "Step away from the podium. Ma'am, this area is restricted." The woman froze. Her hand hovered just above the microphone. The seal of the nation gleamed beneath her fingertips. She had walked through fire to stand there. 3 decades of policy battles, academic smears, hate mail folded beneath trembling hands. But in this moment, all that history shrank to the barrel of authority staring back at her. The officer's boots clicked on marble. "Didn't you hear me?" He moved closer, towering, uniform immaculate, eyes burning with the entitlement of someone who had never been told no. "I'm supposed to speak," she managed, her voice steady, despite the sting behind her eyes. He laughed, a low, dismissive sound that rippled through the crowd. "Not today, you're not." And then, before anyone could move, his arm shot forward. The microphone wobbled. Her body lurched back. Gasps tore through the hall as she stumbled from the podium, her heels scraping across the floor. Someone screamed her name. The cameras didn't blink that. The officer froze as a man's horrified whisper broke the silence. "She's the president." Every sound in the room seemed to vanish, the hum of lights, the breath of 100 stunned witnesses. Only the slow, ragged echo of her fall remained. She lifted her eyes, meeting his face. He had no idea yet what he'd done. Not yet. The lights were blinding, calibrated for broadcast perfection. 1,000 eyes followed President Amara Cole as she stepped toward the podium. Her charcoal suit pressed to precision, her heart a metronome beneath the tailored fabric. The hall smelled faintly of steel and perfume power, in human form. She had done this hundreds of times. Step up, smile, breathe, speak. But today carried a pulse beneath the ceremony. The Unity Summit was meant to symbolize healing, an olive branch between divided institutions. Every word she planned to speak had been written with surgical care. She was halfway to the microphone when a shadow crossed her path. "Ma'am, you're not cleared for this area." The voice was sharp, official, male. Officer Reed Halden. His badge caught the light, a glint of authority that brooked no dialogue. Her stride didn't falter. "Excuse me, this podium's restricted," he repeated, stepping forward, body rigid with performative dominance. Cameras pivoted. The whisper of curiosity rippled through the audience. "Officer," said her aide, Lena, hurrying forward. "That's the." Reed raised a hand. "Step back, ma'am. Security protocol." Amara's jaw tightened. "I am the protocol." The room exhaled as silence gathered. He stared, uncomprehending or unwilling. His hand brushed the butt of his holster. A casual gesture weighted with history. "Ma'am, I said step away." She met his gaze, calm, controlled, a lifetime of practice and restraint. "Do you know who I am?" "Don't care," he muttered, and with that, pushed. The movement wasn't violent by physics, but by meaning. Her body tilted back, gravity turning into humiliation. The flag behind her quivered as her heels scraped across the marble. Gasps rose, phones lifted. Someone shouted, "What are you doing?" Reed froze, realizations still crawling toward him, too slow to matter. "Mr. Halden," said a trembling voice from the press row. "That's President Cole." The air thickened. Amara steadied herself, palm on the floor, breath caught between shock and fury. The cameras kept rolling in different witnesses to the oldest script in America. Her eyes found his, and in that stillness, something irreversible passed between them. Awareness, guilt, and the weight of centuries landing all at once. No one spoke. The world was already watching. The presidential suite was too quiet. Even the walls, soundproofed for privacy, seemed to hum with something unspoken shame. Disbelief, fury held on a leash. Amara sat before the muted television, watching herself fall again and again. Every network played the same clip. The officer's hand, her stagger, the crowd's gasp. Some slowed it down. Some froze on her face mid-fall, eyes wide. Others cropped the shot entirely, cutting to anchors who said, "Unfortunate misunderstanding." Her aide, Lena, stood by the window, phone buzzing every few seconds. "They're calling it a security confusion." Secret Service already drafted an apology. Amara didn't respond. The screen flashed her title beneath the headline, "President Pushed Chaos at Unity Summit." Her chief of staff entered Roland, tie loosened, face tight. Madam President, communications suggests a brief statement before noon. Keep it neutral. Something like, I appreciate law enforcement's dedication and understand the pressures of their work. Lena spun around. Neutral. She was assaulted on camera. Roland shot her a look. This isn't about emotion, it's about optics. If we make this racial, it becomes a war. Amara's voice finally surfaced, low and precise. It was racial, Roland. He faltered. Madam President, respectfully I said it was. She turned from the screen, eyes steady. The man didn't see a president. He saw a woman who didn't belong where he thought power should stand. Silence hung between them. The air conditioning whispered through the vents. Lena's phone buzzed again, social media now aflame with the clip. Hashtags multiplying by the second. One read, hashtag podium push. Another, hashtag say her title. Double quotes. Half the comments are defending him, Lena said quietly. They're saying he just did his job. Roland rubbed his temples. Then let's not give them ammunition. We de-escalate. Amara rose slowly. I won't de-escalate my own humanity. Roland hesitated, torn between protocol and principle. Then at least let the investigation run its course before we speak. We can't risk appearing vindictive. Her gaze sharpened. Vindictive? I was humiliated in front of the nation I lead. Lena stepped closer, lowering her voice. They'll bury this, Amara, just like they buried everything else. You can't let them write this off as a slip-up. Amara studied her reflection in the black TV screen, the faint bruise along her arm where he'd pushed her, the exhaustion pooling beneath her eyes. Where is he now? She asked. Administrative leave, Roland answered. Full pay pending review. Of course. The words came out dry, stripped of surprise. They protect their own, even when the world's watching. Lena clenched her fists. We should release the uncut footage, all angles. Let people see what really happened. Roland snapped. That would violate security protocol. We can't compromise classified footage for public sympathy. Amara turned sharply. This isn't about sympathy. It's about truth. The tension broke like glass. Roland exhaled, defeated. Then tell me, Madam President, what's the plan? You can't fire a state officer without a process. You can't protest your own government. So what do you want to do? Amara walked to the window, looking down at the protesters gathering outside the White House. Gate signs already rising, faces lifted to her unseen. The city pulsed with restless energy. I want the system to answer for itself, she said. Not just him, the structure that trained him to see threat where there was authority. Lena nodded slowly. That's going to be a war. Amara's lips curved, almost a smile. Then let it be one. Roland looked between them, realization dawning that this was no temporary outrage. This was ignition. A chime from the television broke the silence. The network, cutting to a live interview. Officer Reed Halden, clean-shaven now, in a crisp civilian shirt, sat across from a sympathetic host. I regret that it happened, he said, voice smooth, but I followed protocol. I didn't recognize her at first. I was just doing my job. The host nodded gravely. You've been called a racist online. How do you respond? Reed's expression softened with rehearsed humility. I serve everyone equally. I've protected this country for 15 years. People are making this about color. It's not. Lena's phone buzzed again. Notification. Public opinion split 48-50 seconds, Roland muttered. He's winning the narrative. Amara didn't blink, not for long. She turned off the television and faced them both. Call the Attorney General. I want the full report on his record, every complaint, every suspension, every quiet settlement, and pull his department's diversity stats. We'll start there. Lena's eyes widened. You're going after the department. I'm going after the truth, Amara said. Outside, sirens wailed faintly as city beginning to stir in moral turbulence. In that sealed room, the President of the United States stood still, spine straight, resolve crystallizing. She knew what came next would not be clean or quick, but the silence that followed injustice was always more dangerous than the act itself, and she would not let this silence win. The television networks were synchronized like a machine, same tone, same cadence, same edited angles. Officer Reed Halden had become the face of the misunderstood patriot. He didn't mean it, one anchor said. He was under pressure, another echoed. The public was being trained again to forgive what they would never forget if it happened to someone else. Amara watched in silence as the headlines scrolled. Reed's calm face filled the screen, each line rehearsed to perfection. I thought it was a security breach, he said smoothly. I didn't realize she was the president. My only goal was safety. He sat with his attorney, beside him an older man with silver hair, and a habit of interrupting interviewers at the perfect moment. Reed's jaw flexed with righteous indignation. Now they're calling me a racist, but if I hesitate next time, if I don't act fast, they'll call me negligent. You can't win in this job. The studio audience applauded. Lena muted the TV before Amara could see more. They've turned him into a martyr. Amara didn't answer. She stared at the reflection of her own face in the darkened glass, expressionless, steady. What's his record? Lena slid a folder across the table. You're not going to like it. Inside, a series of incident reports, small in isolation but heavy in pattern, complaints of aggressive behavior, verbal misconduct, unnecessary restraint, all quietly dismissed. Most victims were black. He's done this before, Lena said, always to someone with less power. Amara traced one line with her fingertip. Claim dismissed due to lack of corroborating evidence. Lack of evidence. She murmured, they always make sure it disappears. Across the city, in a sterile office framed by flags and framed commendations, Reed Halden adjusted his tie before the camera crew started rolling again. His PR handler smiled. Just keep calm, Reed. America likes a man who owns up, not one who apologizes. You're not guilty, you're misunderstood. Reed smirked. That's exactly how I feel. The camera light blinked on. He leaned forward. I've dedicated my life to protecting people, regardless of race or position. But lately it feels like being white and wearing a badge makes you the villain before the story even starts. It was bait, and the media bit hard. Within hours, pundits were debating whether Amara Cole had provoked the situation by walking up without announcing herself. The narrative mutated, control slipping through official channels like water through a sieve. In the Oval Office, Amara met with the Attorney General, Cynthia Vaughn, whose tone was more political than legal. Madam President, we're facing institutional backlash. The police unions are circling the wagons. If we appear to target this officer unfairly, it'll trigger national protests against us. Amara folded her hands. So we're supposed to protect their comfort at the cost of my dignity. Your dignity is intact, Vaughn said softly. Your leadership is what's at stake. Lena stepped forward. With respect, ma'am, that's the same logic that's kept this cycle alive for decades. The Attorney General's expression hardened. You don't understand how fragile this balance is. Amara's voice cut through. Maybe it deserves to break. A long pause. Vaughn sighed, gathering her files. If you go public with this, you'll divide the nation. Amara looked her dead in the eye. Then, let it divide. It was never united. When Vaughn left, Lena exhaled shakily. You just declared war on the Justice Department. No, Amara said. I reminded them who it belongs to. That night, Reed's attorney held a private press conference. No cameras this time, just a handful of journalists. Carefully selected, he held up a document, a comprehensive internal review that supposedly cleared Reed of wrongdoing. The seal of the Metropolitan Police Authority gleamed across the top. The message was simple, case closed, except Amara had already seen the real report and released raw, unedited. It said the opposite. Lena, she said, standing before the window as night pressed against the city skyline, they're fabricating evidence. How do you want to respond? Amara turned from the glass, face lit by the faint city glow. We won't respond. We'll expose. The next day, she met with investigative journalist Caleb Rowan, one of the few who hadn't bowed to network pressure. Their meeting was off record, deep inside the old library wing of the Capitol, away from microphones. I have something that'll tear the department apart, she said. Caleb raised an eyebrow. And you're sure you want to give it to me? I want it where they can't bury it. He leaned forward, voice low. Once this goes live, there's no undoing it. Amara met his eyes, calm as stone. Goodbye. Midnight. The file hit the encrypted servers. By dawn, it was everywhere. Unredacted complaint logs, hidden settlements, officers shielded by union contracts, and at the center of it all Reed Halden's name, threaded through a decade of abuse. The country erupted. On one channel, outrage. On another, denial. On the streets, protests, chants, signs reading respect the office, not just the uniform. And through it all, Reed sat in his apartment, eyes locked on the screen, jaw twitching as his own face looped endlessly under the headline, Officer's Pattern of Misconduct Exposed. He picked up his phone, dialed someone. You said this wouldn't go public. A voice answered, cold and clipped. Then maybe you shouldn't have pushed the president. The line went dead. Across town, Amara closed her laptop and whispered, "Now the system will have to speak for itself." But she knew deep down that it would not go quietly. The elevator to the Metropolitan Police headquarters smelled of antiseptic and cold metal. Amara's reflection flickered across its mirrored panels and blinking silent. Her Secret Service detail flanked her, but she'd insisted on no cameras, no press. This meeting was private. For now, the doors slid open to a hallway of blue uniforms and forced stillness. Conversations died eyes followed Hersom in awe, most in discomfort. Power had entered their fortress, and they didn't like it. Chief Donovan waited in his office, a man built like the institution itself, thick, unmoving, polished by decades of political survival. His smile was a bureaucratic reflex. "Madame President," he said, standing, "thank you for coming in person. I'd like to extend my sincerest apologies." "Don't." Amara's tone was even, surgical. "You're not sorry. You're careful." The chief's smile faltered, but only slightly. "Our department values transparency. We're cooperating fully with the investigation. Your department tried to bury a decade of misconduct." Donovan gestured toward a chair. "With respect, those records should never have been public. Context matters." "Context?" Amara stepped forward. He pushed the President of the United States in front of the world because his instinct told him, "I didn't belong at that podium." "That's your context." Donovan's hand twitched on his desk. "Officer Halden made a critical error. Yes, but it's not reflective of the department as a whole. You can't hold every officer responsible for one man's actions." "Then why did your department protect him for 10 years? A beat of silence. Donovan's eyes shifted, just slightly. "We followed due process." Amara's voice sharpened. "You followed a culture. You called it process." Lena, standing just behind her, placed a document on the desk. "Here's your culture, Chief. Every internal complaint with Halden's name on it signed, unresolved, unacknowledged, a trail of silence from your office." Donovan didn't touch the papers. "Leaking these was illegal. So was your concealment." Amara replied. He leaned back, composure cracking. "You're politicizing law enforcement, Madam President, undermining public trust." Amara's gaze was cold steel. "You've mistaken public trust for public blindness." For the first time, Donovan's tone slipped. "You don't understand what happens if you tear this down. You think the country's divided now? Wait until you strip the shield away. People need to believe in the badge." Amara took a step closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Then make it worthy of belief." The words hit harder than any accusation. Donovan's jaw tightened, but his silence was admission. When she turned to leave, his parting shot was low, almost pleading. "If you keep pushing this, you'll destroy careers, good people, collateral damage." She paused at the door. If the only way to protect good people is to protect bad ones, then they were never good to begin with. Outside the office, Lena exhaled. "That could have gone worse." Amara said nothing as they walked through the sterile halls. Officers watched, whispering, their faces unreadable behind polite masks. Each badge was a mirror of the problem, shiny, untouchable, empty of accountability. When they reached the car, Lena finally asked, "What now?" Amara looked out across the precinct steps where reporters gathered in vain, shut out from the confrontation. "Now we stop talking to them," she said quietly, "and start talking to the people they've silenced." Later that afternoon, she met privately with families of victims whose complaints had been dismissed. Teachers, nurses, warehouse workers, each told their story softly, their pain weathered by years of disbelief. A woman named Clara Mendez spoke last, her voice trembling but fierce. "They told me no one would believe a woman like me, and they were right, until now." Amara reached across the table, taking her hand. "They were wrong then, and they're wrong now." Cameras weren't there to capture it, but the moment traveled anyway, word of mouth. Phone calls, recordings leaked by witnesses. A different kind of headline began to rise, written not by journalists, but by people who'd stopped being afraid to speak. By nightfall, Chief Donovan issued a press statement, short, defensive, calculated. The department maintains confidence in its officers and urges restraint from those seeking to politicize this unfortunate event. The walls were holding, for now, but they were starting to crack. Amara stood by the window of her residence, city lights flickering below like restless eyes. "They'll double down," Lena said quietly behind her. "They'll call this a witch hunt." "Then let them," Amara replied. "Witches don't burn anymore." The night pressed against the glass. Inside, her resolve solidified. She knew what had to come next. Exposure wasn't enough. It was time to make the truth undeniable. The footage surfaced at dawn, not through official channels, not through the press, through the people. A grainy video appeared first on an obscure social account, then spread like fire. The timestamp matched the day of the Unity Summit. The angle was different this time. Taken from a security camera mounted above the stage one, the department claimed, hadn't been recording. The sound was faint but clear enough. Reed Holden's voice, "Can't believe they're letting her stand up there." Another officer, "That's the president." "Man, Reed, not my president." Then came the push, unedited, unambiguous. By noon, 20 million views. By evening, every major network was replaying it under the banner, "New evidence in Podium incident raises questions of intent." Lena burst into the Oval Office, tablet in hand. "It's everywhere." Amara didn't look up from her notes. "Good, they're saying the footage came from inside the department. Someone leaked it. We don't know who." "Someone with a conscience," Amara said. Roland entered seconds later, voice strained. "Madam President, we need to control this narrative before it gets out of hand." "It already did," she replied. He hesitated. "The union's furious. They're calling the footage doctored. Chief Donovan's demanding an inquiry into the leak itself." Amara finally looked up. "Of course he is. When truth leaks, they investigate the pipe, not the poison." Lena's phone buzzed, non-stop messages. Statements, threats, condolences. The country had split in half overnight. One side called it justice, the other called it sabotage. Outside the White House gates, crowds gathered again, louder this time. Some held signs with her face, others with the words, "Enough is enough." Amara stepped to the window. A cold rain fell across the streets, scattering reflections like broken glass. "They're not here for me," she said quietly. "They're here because they've seen themselves in what happened." Roland rubbed his temples. "You're still the president, Amara. You can't act like an activist." "Then maybe it's time the president did." Her tone stopped him. That night, news anchors debated whether the footage was legally admissible and ethically sourced. Reed's attorney held an emergency interview. "This so-called leak is an illegal violation of privacy," he said. "The president should condemn it if she truly believes in due process." Reed sat beside him, silent, jaw locked, but his eyes betrayed something new, not defiance, but fear. He had underestimated her resolve, and worse, overestimated his immunity. At midnight, a press release went out under the president's letterhead. "The footage you've seen is authentic. It reveals not only an act of disrespect toward me, but the reflection of a system that trains its enforcers to mistake authority for threat when it wears a darker skin. This is not about one man, it's about a culture, and cultures do not change through silence." The statement hit like an earthquake. Supporters flooded the streets with candles and banners, others burned her image, shouting about anti-police propaganda. The nation convulsed, and Amara stood at its fault line unflinching. Meanwhile, Lena traced the leak's source. The metadata led back to an anonymous whistleblower within the department, a single alias, Sable. Amara ordered her team to locate them, not to punish, but to protect. Whoever Sable was, they had detonated the truth. 2 days later, a message appeared in Amara's secure inbox. No name, just text. "I worked under Donovan. We've been ordered to destroy internal files tying Holden to earlier. They're wiping servers tonight." Lena read it aloud, eyes wide. "We can stop them, but we'll need a federal warrant." "Get one," Amara said. "Through Vaughn." "Yes, she's not going to like it. She doesn't have to." Within hours, agents raided the data center of the Metropolitan Police. Backup drives, email chains, suppressed complaints all seized. Among the files, internal memos showing the chief's office had classified multiple misconduct cases as resolved without review. The evidence was systemic rot, fossilized in bureaucracy. When the news broke, Chief Donovan appeared on camera, face pale under the studio lights. "These so-called leaks distort context," he insisted. "Our officers are under attack by misinformation. We need unity, not blame." But the public wasn't listening anymore. They had seen the tape. They had read the memos. They had started connecting dots that could no longer be unconnected. By the end of the week, Congress announced a formal inquiry. Reed Holden was subpoenaed to testify. In the quiet of the residence, Lena set down her phone. "You realize what this means, right? You've started something you can't control." Amara didn't flinch. "Good. Control is how they've kept us quiet." "People are calling this your rebellion," Lena said softly. Amara turned toward the window where the rain had stopped. The city lights flickered against the wet streets. No, she murmured. This isn't rebellion. It's remembrance. Outside, thunder rumbled against low distant, like a warning or a promise. Somewhere in the dark, someone was already planning the counterattack. Capitol Hill hummed with tension. Cameras lined the marble corridors, microphones angled like bayonets. The hearing was public by Amara's demand. Reed Halden sat at the witness table, flanked by attorneys. His uniform was gone. A civilian suit hung loose on his frame. The nation watched him fidget under the weight of silence. Senator Vaughn led the questioning. Officer Haldeman, the day of the Unity Summit, what was your intent when you approached President Ward? His throat bobbed. I didn't have intent. It was chaos. I acted on instinct. Instinct, Vaughn repeated. The same instinct that made you shove the country's first black woman president in front of millions. His lawyer interjected, objection argumentative. Overruled, Vaughn said. Answer the question. Reed's voice cracked. It wasn't about race. Laughter rippled through the audience, sharp and bitter. Vaughn leaned forward. Then what was it about? He hesitated, then muttered. Protocol. Protocol doesn't authorize assault, officer. It doesn't excuse contempt. So, again, what were you protecting us from? Reed's jaw tightened. From losing control. The words hung heavy. Vaughn glanced toward the president, seated behind a pane of glass, her expression unreadable. Thank you, the senator said. That will be all. The cameras zoomed in on Amara's face. For the first time, she looked weary not of the fight, but of the predictability of it all. Later that evening, Lena found her in the Roosevelt room, staring at a muted news broadcast replaying the hearing. They're tearing him apart, Lena said. He tore himself apart. Amara replied, all I did was let the light in. Lena hesitated. The Attorney General says Donovan's planning a process. He'll paint the inquiry as a political witch hunt. Let him, Amara said. He's been hiding in that uniform his whole life. It's time he stands naked in front of truth. The door opened. Roland entered with classified folders. It started, he said flatly. What? Anonymous threats, targeted leaks. They're digging into your past speeches, your old associations, anything they can twist. It's an information war now. Amara closed her eyes briefly. Then we fight it the same way we fight everything else, with evidence. He hesitated. And what if evidence isn't enough anymore? She looked up at him. It never was. That's why we're here. 2 nights later, an explosion ripped through a data archive belonging to the Metropolitan Police Department. The files Amara had ordered seized were scheduled for transfer to federal custody the next morning. Everything destroyed. Lena arrived at the Situation Room breathless. They did it. They burned the proof. Roland was already shouting into a phone. Find who authorized that transfer route. I want every manifest cross-check. Amara stood still amid the chaos. No one authorized it, she said softly. They did it because they could. Silence. Then she spoke again, colder. This is their confession. The next morning, she addressed the nation. No teleprompter, no script, just the podium, the same one where she'd been shoved months before. We were told justice takes time, that systems correct themselves, that patience is virtue, but patience without accountability is decay, and decay does not heal, it consumes. She paused. Cameras flashed. They burned the evidence because the evidence burned them. But you saw it. You all saw it. You don't need a file to tell you what's real. You need memory and courage. This is not about me. It's about us. The only way forward is through transparency, even when it's ugly, especially when it's ugly. For a moment, she let the silence breathe. The government does not own truth. The people do. When she stepped down, the room was dead quiet. Then the applause erupted, not thunderous, but relentless. That night, while cities lit candles in her name, Chief Donovan convened an emergency meeting in his office. We underestimated her, one deputy said. Donovan's face was a mask of fury. No, we underestimated the hunger. You feed people lies long enough, truth tastes like blood. He turned to Reed's attorney, who had been waiting quietly in the corner. Tell your client to disappear. He's done talking. Where to? Anywhere cameras don't go. By dawn, Reed Halden was missing. His apartment stripped bare. Badge, gone. Cell phone, smashed. The media called it a disappearance. Amara called it an erasure. In her private office, she read a handwritten note slipped under her door. No name, just 3 words. They found Sable. She looked up slowly, where, no answer, only the sound of distant sirens, swelling like a storm approaching the capital. Washington didn't sleep that night. Helicopters thundered over the Potomac. News tickers screamed breaking. Key witness located in D.C. suburb. The name Sable echoed across every newsroom once, a whisper in internal reports, now a symbol of what had been buried. Amara stood by the Situation Room window, city lights reflecting off her face. Roland entered, holding a dossier marked classified recovered source testimony. "She's alive," he said, "hidden for months under a false identity. We got her through a whistleblower network." Amara turned, conditioned, rattled, paranoid. "Says she's being hunted. By who?" Same unit Reed worked under, the old Internal Response Division. Off books, ops burn, evidence, silence, witnesses. Amara's pulse tightened. "Then we move now, before they reach her." The convoy cut through the city under heavy rain. Lena rode beside Amara, tension coiled in her jaw. "She won't trust us easily," Lena said. "She's seen what this system does to tellers. She trusts the truth," Amara replied. When they arrived, the house was unmarked, a rented townhouse on the edge of Arlington. 2 agents stood by the door, drenched. Inside, Sable sat at the dining table, thin, sleepless, eyes darting at every sound. Amara approached slowly. "Ms. Grant." The woman flinched. "That's not my name anymore." Amara nodded. "Then tell me what name you need to be safe." Sable studied her. "President Ward," she said finally. "You shouldn't be here. They'll come for both of us." "They already have," Amara said. "But we can stop them if you help us understand what you know." Sable's hands trembled as she opened a flash drive. "I was a data analyst. I saw the incident logs. The orders came from above. Reed was just the muscle. The real rot starts with Donovan." Amara exchanged a look with Roland. "Proof. Encrypted backups. But the original files, they burned those in the archive explosion." "We recovered fragments," Roland said. "Can you reconstruct them?" Sable nodded slowly. "If I live long enough." A sudden bang shattered the Era car door, slamming outside. Roland's gun was out instantly. Lena moved to the window. "Black SUV," she hissed. "Unmarked." Amara grabbed Sable's arm. "Downstairs." Now, bullets cracked through the window. The agents outside shouted commands, the night flaring with muzzle flashes. "Go," Roland yelled. They moved through the basement corridor to a service exit. Sable stumbled, gasping. "I told you, they don't let witnesses live." Amara steadied her. "You're not dying for their secrets." Sirens wailed nearby federal backup. The attackers retreated into the dark. When it was over, smoke curled from shattered windows, and the house's alarms screamed into silence. 2 hours later, Sable sat in a secure federal bunker, exhausted, pale, but alive. Her voice shook as she recounted the chain of orders: internal suppression of racial incidents, falsified officer reports, blacklisted whistleblowers. They kept everything coded under Public Integrity Division. Sounds noble, right? It was their kill switch. Amara leaned forward. "Can this data prove institutional cover-up?" Sable met her eyes. "It can prove treason." Roland exhaled. "Then we bring it to light." Sable hesitated. "There's more. Reed tried to stop it. He filed an internal complaint weeks before the summit. They destroyed it." Amara's breath caught. "He what? He wasn't innocent, but he wasn't the architect. Donovan needed a scapegoat, and Red fit the part." Lena's voice was low. "So he was both tool and sacrifice." Amara's gaze hardened, and Donovan's, still untouched. The next morning, she convened a private meeting with the Attorney General. "I'm authorizing a special counsel," she said. "Full federal exposure of the Internal Response Division." The AG frowned. "That could split the administration. You'll make enemies you can't see." "I already have," she replied. "Now they'll have names." By nightfall, leaked footage of the Arlington attack hit the networks. News anchors replayed the grainy clips of Amara shielding Sable under gunfire. The narrative flipped. She was no longer a victim or a symbol. She was the catalyst. Crowds gathered outside the White House gates, chanting, "No cover, no silence, no shield." Amara watched from the window, expression unreadable. Lena stood beside her. "You realize what this means? If you push this, they'll turn every channel, every headline, every committee against you." Amara nodded. "Let them. We've spent centuries surviving behind podiums built to silence us. I'm done surviving." She turned away from the window. "Now we make them listen." Outside, lightning cracked across the DC sky. thunder rolling over the crowds. Somewhere beyond the storm, a file began to upload Sable's reconstruction, piece by piece, into the public record. Within it lay one chilling, final directive signed under Donovan's name: preserve order at any cost. Amara stared at the screen as the words came into focus. At any cost, she whispered. Let's see if they meant it. The footage hit the airwaves at dawn. News anchors' voices trembled as they described the leak. Decades of classified directives, internal memos, and covert orders, all signed, sealed, and time-stamped under Chief Donovan's command. The documents detailed racial profiling quotas, suppression of complaints, and sanctioned retaliation against whistleblowers. The term preserve order became the symbol of betrayal. Amara didn't watch the broadcast from the Oval Office. She sat in the quiet of the Lincoln bedroom, robe over her shoulders, eyes fixed on the pale morning light. Lena entered softly. It's everywhere. International coverage. They're calling it the largest civil rights scandal in modern history. Amara didn't move. And Donovan, missing. His residence is under guard. Reed Halden's name is trending again. They're demanding his testimony. Amara finally looked up. He's gone. They erased him. Maybe not. Roland appeared at the doorway, a phone in his hand. Local news out of Delaware just got a tip. Anonymous caller said they saw Halden near the docks alone. Lena frowned. You think he'll talk? Amara stood. He already did. Once, when no one listened. This time, the world's watching. By nightfall, the marina was empty except for the soft hum of boats against their ropes. Reed Halden sat on a bench, eyes hollow, clothes soaked by drizzle. When Amara approached, he didn't flinch. You found me, he said flatly. I didn't come to arrest you, she said. I came to understand. He gave a bitter laugh. Understand what? How a man becomes a symbol of hate overnight. No, Amara said quietly. How a system convinces him it's duty. Reed stared at the water. I thought I was protecting people, but I was protecting fear. They trained us to see threat in every difference. You learn to move first and think later. Amara's tone sharpened. And when you pushed me, what did you see? He hesitated. A stranger in a place I didn't believe she belonged. The words hit like stone. She absorbed them silently, the sound of rain filling the space between them. Finally, he spoke again. Donovan used me. I filed complaints. They vanished. I asked questions. They called it insubordination, so I shut up. Until that day. Why come forward now? He turned toward her. Because you didn't break, and I did. Hours later, Amara stood before the press again. Same podium, same flash of cameras, same storm outside. We have lived under the myth of order, she began, voice steady. But order without equality is tyranny. Security without justice is fear. Today, we end both. An independent counsel will prosecute the network behind these crimes. Every name, every directive, every silence will face the law. To those who believed the system too strong to fail, you were right. It didn't fail. It was designed this way. Our job now is to rebuild it. The crowd erupted, not with applause, but with a collective exhalation, releasing its held breath. At the same hour, federal agents surrounded Donovan's private estate. Inside, he stood at his desk, hands trembling over a shredder filled with torn documents. Sir, an agent barked, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and perjury. Donovan smirked faintly. You think justice wins because of one speech? The agent cuffed him. No, sir, because of 1,000 people who stopped staying silent. Cameras caught his arrest at dawn, his once iron image, now crumbling under the same spotlight he'd weaponized. Back in the White House, Lena entered Amara's office with breaking reports. It's over. The department's in receivership. Congress is forming a reform committee. They're calling it the Ward Act. Amara exhaled, a long, trembling breath. It's not over, she said. It's beginning. Roland looked at her. You've changed the country. She shook her head. The country changed itself. I just stopped looking away. Later that night, alone in the residence, she watched archival footage on her tablet the moment Reed shoved her from the podium. She watched her own body fall, the crowd's gasp, the chaos. Then she paused, it on his face. Not rage, not triumph. Fear. She whispered to the screen. We were both prisoners. She closed the tablet, turned off the light, and stared into the dark. The rain outside had stopped. Weeks passed. Donovan's trial began. Sable entered witness protection. Reed Halden took the stand voluntarily, his voice shaking but clear. We were taught to confuse power with virtue, he said. President Ward taught me the difference. His testimony sealed the conviction. Months later, At a memorial for victims of state violence, Amara spoke to a crowd gathered under a new monument. The bronze plaque bore a single line, "Truth is not rebellion." Her final words were quiet, almost swallowed by wind. Justice is not a moment, it's a habit, and we're just learning to breathe. The audience stood in silence. The camera panned up, catching the reflection of the monument in her eyes, steady, tired, but unbroken. Above them, flags waved, not in triumph but in mourning, for what had been lost and hoped for what might still be rebuilt. 6 months later, Washington was quieter. The headlines had shifted. The outrage had cooled into analysis, reforms, and debates. But for Amara Ward, quiet did not mean peace. Every morning, she still walked past the mirror in the East Wing hallway, the same mirror she'd glimpsed herself in moments before Reed Halden's shove. Every time, she saw the same thing, not victory, not vindication, just the residue of survival. Her chief of staff, Lena, entered with the day's intelligence report. Approval ratings are stabilizing. The Ward Act cleared the Senate last night. You'll be remembered for this. Amara didn't look up. History doesn't remember women like me. It revises them. Lena hesitated. You rebuilt the department. You exposed a national cover-up. You faced them all down on live television. And for half the country, I'm still the woman who made them uncomfortable. She pushed the file aside. What's next? Lena exhaled. Next, we heal. Amara smiled faintly. Then we'll be busy for centuries. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Tourists took photos of the White House gates, unaware of how much blood those gates had hidden. Protest signs from months ago still leaned against trash cans, sun-bleached and forgotten. In an unmarked safe house across town, Sable sat with 2 federal agents reviewing her new identity documents. Her hair was shorter now, her voice steadier. You're free to go, one agent said. She nodded slowly. Freedom's strange, she murmured, feels lighter than it should. At the same hour, Reed Halden appeared on a local news segment, his first public statement since the trial. He looked older, his voice careful. I used to think silence was safety, that if I kept my head down, I'd survive. But silence doesn't save anyone, it just delays the collapse. I won't ask for forgiveness. I'll earn it by telling the truth every time it hurts. The interviewer asked, do you think President Ward will forgive you? Reed looked off command. She already did. That's what broke me. That evening, Amara watched the clip in her office. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. Just a long silence before she whispered. He finally saw the mirror. Roland entered. We've had inquiries from civil rights groups. They want you to open the archives to the public, every document, every file. Do it, she said. He hesitated. It'll expose allies too. So be it. Justice that hides isn't justice, it's theater. The next day she visited the memorial again. A storm was brewing, low thunder, heavy air. Crowds had thinned. Only a few lingered, standing in quiet reverence before the inscription, Truth is not rebellion. A small boy stood beside his mother, looking up at the bronze letters. Mama, he asked, what does it mean? His mother answered softly, it means sometimes telling the truth is the bravest thing you can do. Amara watched from a distance. Her chest ached with something deeper than pride, something close to grief. That night, in the residence, Lena brought her a letter from Reed Halden. He mailed it directly to the office of the president. No press, no intermediaries. Amara hesitated, then unfolded the paper. The handwriting was tight, deliberate. Madam President, I've spent my life in uniforms that told me who to be. You taught me who I actually was. I can't undo what I did, but I can spend what's left of my life undoing the lies I helped build. You gave me back a conscience I thought was gone. For what it's worth, I see you now. R.H. Amara folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. She whispered, then maybe we're both free. The next morning, she delivered her final address to the nation before leaving office. No teleprompter, no applause, lines, just words heavy with truth. Power has a short memory. It forgives itself faster than it forgives others. But justice, real justice, doesn't vanish when the cameras go dark. We cannot legislate empathy. We cannot regulate conscience. But we can choose to stop pretending that equality is optional. If I leave you with anything, let it be this. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear decide what's right. When she finished, the chamber was silent. No ovation, no music, just the sound of breath, collective, fragile, human. That night, She walked alone through Lafayette Square. Rain drizzled against the bronze statue of the monument. She placed her hand on the cold metal dot behind her. The city glowed. Sirens distant. News vans gone. Only the hum of streetlights remained. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the rain-slicked plaque. She whispered, not to the monument, not to the city, but to the ghosts that still haunted its marble walls. We're still here. She turned, her figure receding into the wet light, small, steady, unbroken. The wind carried the faint sound of church bells from somewhere across the river. For a moment, it sounded like a heartbeat.